The modern world tells a very specific tired story about men growing older. It paints a picture of the aging male as someone profoundly afraid of the quiet, someone desperate for companionship, someone urgently looking for a caretaker, a safety net, or a second chance at a fundamentally flawed script. But that narrative is entirely wrong. There is a silent shift happening right now, a steadfast, unspoken movement among men who have crossed the threshold of 50. They are not frantically searching for a new partner. They are not rushing to replace the rings they once took off. They are simply refusing to remarry. And the world watches this decision with absolute confusion. People look at your solitary life and make assumptions. They assume you're bitter. They assume you're damaged. They whisper that you have given up on connection or that you're too rigidly stuck in your ways to make room for another human being. It is not bitterness. It is not a tragedy. It is an awakening. You have lived through the heavy storms, you have built foundations provided relentlessly, and surrendered your own internal needs to the heavy machinery of a traditional marriage. You gave your energy, you gave your youth, you did exactly what was expected of a good man. Now the dust has finally settled. The room is quiet. For the first time in perhaps 30 years, the silence is not an empty void waiting to be filled by someone else's demands. It is a masterpiece. It is entirely yours. Choosing to remain unmarried at this stage of life is never a failure. It is a remarkable privilege. It is the conscious evolution of a man who finally recognizes the staggering value of his own peace. You are no longer willing to gamble your hard-earned tranquility just to satisfy a cultural expectation. You are no longer willing to bend to break or to shrink yourself to fit into a dynamic that requires endless emotional labor. You have paid the admission fee for this exact freedom. The price was exceptionally high. It was paid in sleepless nights, in silent compromises, and in the painful dismantling of past promises. You earned this space. Let them judge the path you walk. Let them completely misunderstand the calmness in your eyes. This choice is not a retreat from the world. This is the exact moment you step fully into your own power, unapologetic and entirely unbound. Today we're going to explore the beautiful reality of why closing the door on marriage is the most authentic decision you will ever make. Let us look back for a moment. Not to dwell, not to open old wounds, but to acknowledge the monumental effort it took to arrive at this specific point in time. You remember the feeling perfectly. The constant low-grade tension humming in the background of your own home. The careful navigation of moods. The endless discussions that went nowhere looping infinitely like a broken record. You gave your absolute best to a system that demanded continuous sacrifice. You poured your energy into a vessel that was always leaking. You compromised your preferences. You silenced your objections to keep the peace. You absorbed the blame when things went wrong simply because you were the man standing there. You became a shock absorber for every bump in the road. That was not just marriage, that was an emotional marathon. And when it finally ended, it left a heavy mark. The ink on the legal papers dried, but the exhaustion settled deep into your bones. Society expects a man to bounce back immediately. They expect you to hit the gym, buy a new wardrobe, and get right back out there into the dating pool as if nothing happened. But you did something entirely different. You stopped. You sat down in an empty room. You listened to the quiet. At first, the absence of noise might have felt strange. We are conditioned to associate a quiet house with a lack of love. The world calls it loneliness. The world pities the man eating dinner by himself. They are entirely wrong. They do not understand the absolute difference between isolation and solitude. Loneliness is a state of lack. It is a hunger for someone to fill a void. Solitude, however, is a state of complete mastery. It is not empty. It is not sad. It is fiercely unapologetically full. You woke up one morning and realized the heavy atmosphere had lifted. You realized you could breathe without calculating the impact of your exhale. The realization hits you like a tidal wave. You are the sole architect of your environment. There is no unpredictable weather inside your house anymore. No sudden outbursts of anger over a misplaced item. No icy curtains stretching across the dining table for days on end. You built a stronghold. This stronghold is not made of stone or brick. It is constructed from the painful lessons of your past. It is built from the firm certainty that you will never again allow external turbulence to dictate your internal state. The cost of this stronghold was staggering. You paid for it with years of your life with unimaginable stress, and perhaps with the loss of people you once held dear. Because the price was so high, the asset you purchased is guarded with fierce intensity. Your peace of mind is no longer a luxury, it is your primary currency. When you look at the prospect of a new marriage, you do not see a romantic adventure. You see a massive, unnecessary risk to your hard-earned stability. Why would a man who has finally escaped a turbulent ocean willingly jump back into a leaking boat? Why would you hand over the keys to your haven to someone who might tear down the walls? The answer is simple. You do not. You refuse to gamble the serenity of your Sunday mornings. You refuse to negotiate your daily routines. You reject the premise that you must share your sacred space to be considered a whole human being. You have looked at the proposition of "till death do us part" and firmly declined the offer. This is not an act of surrender. It is an act of supreme self-preservation. You have transitioned from a provider of resources to a protector of your own soul. The energy you used to spend managing someone else's emotional state is now flowing directly back into your own veins. You're healing, you're resting, you're thriving in the magnificent stillness of a life entirely under your control. The people outside your stronghold will call you stubborn. They will say you are rigidly set in your ways. Let them talk. They are standing in the noise trying to critique a man who has mastered the art of silence. They have not paid your dues. They have not walked in your shoes. They do not get a single vote in how you spend the rest of your life. Your boundary is an iron wall, and the tranquility on your side of the wall is magnificent. Let us speak openly about the invisible elephant in the room. Let us talk about the math of a man's life. You spent your 20s grinding. You spent your 30s building. You spent your 40s accumulating, providing and ensuring that everyone else under your roof was secure. You traded your physical prime for a paycheck. You sacrificed your passions for a mortgage. You did the honourable thing, and then the system showed its true face. For many men stepping into their 50s, the previous chapter did not just end with a broken heart. It ended with a devastating financial reset. You watched courts divide your lifelong labour. You saw retirement accounts slashed in half. You handed over the keys to a house you paid for while simultaneously writing a cheque to fund a lifestyle you were no longer part of. The trauma of that division is real. It leaves a lasting scar. Society expects you to forget this. The culture of modern dating tells you to push those brutal realities aside in the name of romance. They want you to believe that bringing up assets is cold. They shame men for wanting to protect what little they manage to salvage from the wreckage. It is not cynicism. It is not selfishness. It is not greed. It is basic, undeniable math. At 50, your runway is significantly shorter. You do not have another 30 years to start from scratch. You cannot grind through double shifts to rebuild a retirement fund that was wiped out by a judge's gavel. Your energy is finite. Your time is suddenly the most precious commodity you possess. Marriage, stripped of its poetic illusions, is a binding legal contract. It is a corporate merger of two entities, and right now, as a man standing in the second half of his life, you are looking at that contract and seeing a terrible investment. Why would you sign a blank check with your future? Why would you invite the state back into your personal affairs as you refuse? Absolutely and unequivocally. Choosing to stay unmarried is the ultimate assertion of your financial sovereignty. It is the realization that your money is a direct reflection of your life force. Every dollar in your savings account represents an hour you worked when your bones ached. It represents a vacation you did not take. It represents the sweat of your younger self. You are protecting that younger man. You are honouring his sacrifice. You want to leave an inheritance to your own children, not to a new spouse's relatives. You want to travel without asking for permission to spend your own money. You want to buy the car, upgrade the house, or simply watch your bank balance grow with the absolute certainty that no one can legally take it away from you on a whim. You refuse to merge your accounts. You refuse to complicate your taxes. You refuse to be viewed as a walking ATM or a retirement plan for someone else. This financial firewall is not a punishment to women. It is a necessary boundary for yourself. You are perfectly capable of generosity. You can buy dinner, you can pay for trips, you can spoil a partner if you choose to, but you will do it on your own terms. You will give from a place of freedom, not from a place of legal obligation. There is an immense, unshakable dignity in owning everything with your name on it. When you lock the door at night, you know exactly who owns the roof over your head. You own it. Every single nail, every single floorboard. The car in the driveway is yours. The debt is zero. Nobody can threaten to take half of your peace. Nobody can use your assets as leverage in an emotional argument. The fear of ruin is entirely gone from your daily existence. You look at the aggressive dating market where financial expectations are often hidden behind sweet words. You see the subtle probing questions about your career, your property, and your portfolio. You recognize the game instantly, and you step away from the table. You have successfully bought back your own life. The receipt is in your pocket, the transaction is complete. You will never put that ownership up for sale again. Let us dismantle another exhausting myth. Let us tear down the insulting assumption that a man of a certain age requires a supervisor for his own existence. Society pushes a highly unflattering narrative about the unmarried man in his 50s or 60s. Pop culture paints you as helpless. They imagine you living in a disorganized mess entirely incapable of operating a washing machine, desperately needing a woman to civilize your living space. They assume you're looking for a nurse. They believe you're searching for a maid with a wedding band. It is incredibly insulting. It is entirely false. It is an outdated fiction. You do not need a caretaker. You know exactly how to roast a chicken. You know how to keep your floors spotless. You're perfectly capable of folding your own laundry, paying your utility bills on time, and scheduling your own medical appointments. The domestic realm is not a mystery to you. In fact, you have likely mastered it. There is a deep, quiet satisfaction in maintaining your own environment. When you clean your kitchen, it stays clean. When you organize your garage, nobody rearranges your tools. You buy the groceries you actually want to eat, and you cook them exactly the way you prefer. Your home is a well-oiled machine running flawlessly under your sole direction. You are not a child looking for a substitute mother. You are a highly functional adult. In the past, the unspoken contract of traditional marriage often rested on a strict exchange. The man provided the financial infrastructure. The woman provided the domestic management. You went to work, fought the daily battles out in the world, and brought home the resources. In return, you were supposedly taken care of, but you have already lived through that arrangement. You know the hidden costs of that specific trade. You remember the underlying resentment that often accompanied those domestic tasks. You recall the feeling that your financial contributions were simply expected while basic household management was treated as an immense burdensome favor. You recognize the imbalance. You see how that old model was designed to keep you perpetually indebted. Now you have completely opted out of that transaction. Why would you exchange your hard-earned financial freedom for a home-cooked meal you can easily prepare yourself? Why would you sign away half your net worth just to have someone else pick out your curtains? The math simply does not align. The return on investment is abysmal. You refuse to be reduced to a utility. You refuse to be viewed as a walking insurance policy. The modern dating scene for older men often feels like an aggressive job interview for the role of a provider. The questions are lightly veiled, but the intent is glaringly obvious. They want to know your lifestyle. They want to gauge your generosity. They are assessing your capacity to elevate their standard of living. You spot this dynamic from a mile away. Your intuition is razor sharp. You are done being the endless well of resources for someone else's comfort. You have provided enough. You have carried the heavy burden of being the primary engine for decades. You have earned the right to lay that burden down. You are finally allowed to be selfish in the healthiest, most vital sense of the word. Taking care of yourself is a revolutionary act. It is a daily declaration of independence. When you prepare a meal for one, you are not wallowing in sadness. You are practicing self-reliance. When you sit in your meticulously organized living room, you are experiencing the pure reward of your own competence. You are the master of your domain. You are the absolute captain of your ship. You look at the expectation to remarry, to step back into the rigid role of the provider husband, and you firmly decline. You have retired from that profession. You have handed in your badge. Your energy is finally yours to consume. Your domestic life is entirely self-sufficient. You have proven to the world, and more importantly to yourself, that a man standing alone is not a tragedy waiting to be rescued. He is a formidable force of nature, perfectly complete exactly as he is. Let us strip away the polite fiction. Let us talk about the clock. When you cross the threshold of 50, your relationship with time fundamentally shifts. You no longer look at the horizon and see an endless expanse of decades stretching out before you. You see a finite window. You see the precious, unrenewable resource of your remaining years. In your 20s, you had time to make colossal mistakes. In your 30s, you had time to bend your personality to accommodate a bad match. In your 40s, you had time to argue in circles and hope for a different outcome. Today, you do not have that luxury, and you do not want it. Time is no longer something you spend, it is something you fiercely protect. For years, you wore a mask. You played the role of the peacemaker. You swallowed your actual opinions to keep the temperature of the house stable. You watched the television shows she preferred. You attended the social gatherings you secretly despised. You adjusted the thermostat to her liking even when you were sweating through your shirt. Society calls this compromise. Society calls it the beautiful work of a successful union. You call it exhausting. You call it a slow, deliberate erosion of your own identity. To remain unmarried now is to finally take off that heavy mask. It is the breathtaking rise of your unfiltered, authentic self. You spent your entire adult life operating as a collective unit. Every major decision, from the vehicle you purchased to the food in the pantry, was passed through the filter of a partnership. The collective dictated your schedule. The collective determined your vacation destinations. Now that dynamic has dissolved. You're exclusively operating as an individual, and the power of that single status is immense. When you say you are leaving the house, there is no follow-up interrogation. There is no anxiety about your return time. When you decide to make a purchase, there is no financial committee to convince. You answer to no one but the man in the mirror. Think about the sheer, unadulterated joy of absolute control over your physical environment. The television remote stays exactly where you left it. The volume is exactly as loud as you desire. The temperature in the bedroom is crisp, cool, and perfectly calibrated to your own comfort. You sleep exactly how you want. You wake up when your body tells you to wake up. These are not petty details. These are not the selfish demands of a stubborn elder. They are the physical manifestations of a liberated spirit. They are daily, tangible reminders that you belong entirely to yourself. You are making a monumental declaration. You are stating that your core essence is no longer up for debate. You have reached an age where you know exactly what you like. You know how you prefer your coffee. You know which books you want to read in uninterrupted silence. You know the exact brand of quiet you require on a Sunday afternoon. Why would you invite a new partner into your life just to start the endless cycle of negotiation all over again? Why would you allow someone to critique your habits, question your hobbies, or attempt to remodel your personality? You simply will not. The dating market looks at a man who refuses to compromise and labels him difficult. They say he is too rigid. They claim he is unwilling to do the heavy lifting of a relationship. They are completely missing the point. You've already done the heavy lifting. You spent decades compromising. You have an honorary degree in bending over backward. You gave away massive pieces of yourself until there was barely anything left to recognize. You survived that emotional grinder. Now it is your turn to be whole. You are unapologetically prioritizing your own comfort. You are guarding your energy reserves with ruthless efficiency. If a situation does not bring you immediate, uncomplicated value, you simply walk away. You do not explain yourself. You do not write a long apology. You just exit. This level of autonomy is intoxicating. It is the ultimate reward for surviving the first half of your story. You are finally introducing the world to the man you are always meant to be. He is calm, he is decisive, he is entirely unbothered by the expectations of others. He is the master of his own fate, refusing to sign another contract that requires him to be anything less than exactly who he is. Let us be absolutely clear about one crucial detail. Choosing to remain unmarried is not a vow of total isolation. It is not a bitter rejection of women, and it is certainly not the end of romance. Society loves to paint the unmarried older man as a grumpy hermit locked away in his fortress, completely terrified of intimacy. They assume that if you do not want a wedding ring, you must not want a companion. They are conflating two entirely different concepts. You still appreciate the warmth of a genuine connection. You still enjoy a deeply engaging conversation over a good dinner. You still value the beauty, the grace, and the undeniable magnetism of feminine energy. The desire for companionship does not simply evaporate the moment you cross the half-century mark, but the architecture of how you engage with that desire has fundamentally transformed. You are no longer interested in the traditional package deal. You want the absolute best parts of a relationship without the suffocating administrative overhead. You want the laughter. You want the intimacy. You want the shared experiences. You absolutely do not want the shared mortgage, the merged bank accounts, or the endless negotiations over closet space. Enter a brilliant, incredibly liberating paradigm. It is often called living apart together. It is the ultimate expression of relational freedom earned through decades of hard lessons. You meet, you enjoy a wonderful evening, you share stories, you share affection, and you create beautiful memories. And then, at the end of the night, a magnificent thing happens. She goes back to her home. You return to your perfectly quiet domain. There is no morning after tension. There is no bickering over whose turn it is to take out the trash. There is no subtle resentment building up over mismatched domestic habits. The relationship remains in a state of perpetual dating. It stays vibrant. It stays entirely voluntary. This model is built on pure, unadulterated choice. When you see a partner, it is because you actively want to see them, not because you are legally bound to occupy the same square footage. Every date is a conscious decision. Every single interaction is intentional. When the social battery runs low, or when you simply need to exist in your own silence, you retreat. You recharge. You maintain your absolute sovereignty. This is not a fear of commitment. It is the highest form of boundary setting. You're committing to the most important person in the equation. You're committing to yourself. You're offering someone the best version of who you are, the rested, unburdened, emotionally available version, while firmly keeping the keys to your kingdom safely in your own pocket. The modern man over 50 realizes that he can have love without the binding paperwork. He can have warmth without the legal liability. He has finally cracked the code, discovering that the sweetest connections are the ones that never threaten his hard-won independence. Let us bring this entire truth into the light. Refusing to step back into the matrimonial arena is not a symptom of defeat. It is not a bitter end. It is the absolute pinnacle of a life well lived. You have successfully navigated the turbulent waters. You have carried the heavy loads, fought the necessary battles, and paid the ultimate price for your current reality. Society can keep its outdated scripts. The world can keep its desperate rush toward the altar. They simply do not know what you know. You are standing on a summit of your own making. The air up here is exceptionally clear. The view is magnificent. You are no longer required to shrink your spirit, compromise your hard-earned assets, or apologize for wanting the simple, unadulterated joy of an undisturbed morning. You are a sovereign presiding over a deeply peaceful domain. You owe explanations to absolutely no one. This specific chapter of your life is exclusively yours. It is a masterpiece of intention. It is a daily deliberate celebration of the man who finally realized his own worth and decided that his tranquility is firmly non-negotiable. You have won the most important victory of all. You have won yourself back. You are not alone in this realization. There is an entire unspoken brotherhood of men walking this exact same path, finding immense, unshakable strength in the quiet. If this message resonates with your soul, if you have also built a permanent fortress of calm that you absolutely refuse to surrender, I invite you to share your story below. Tell us about the exact moment you chose your own freedom. Tell us about the beautiful reality of your unmarried life. Drop a comment and let your voice be heard. Your lived experience might be the exact validation another man desperately needs to hear today.